I don't know if I'm getting too specific, but in Leelanau County, everything's rural. So this new food waste recycling, I would like to see us work the bugs out of how to do it.
I'll echo Corey in, I think having a concrete plan to react to the old plan would probably help level some of this so that we're at least sort of understanding what the universe is. So I think it would be both educational and it would also easier than sort of starting with a blank piece of paper to have something. And I think it's been amended a few times, so it kind of shows a progression which might help give us some context for what we're trying to do. So I would echo that sentiment as well.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we're talking about 3 counties, so there's 3 different plans. I believe Grand Traverse County's is the most recently updated one, which actually the state tends to use as an example for other counties. Before materials management planning was a thing, they have it right on their website, so it must have been pretty decent, but that is something to consider. That is 3 different plans, and do we want to look at each one of those?
I would also echo, I was reading some of the documents we had, and we have hard numbers on what we recycle and what we don't recycle, and there's 3 plans. It'd be kind of nice to know what we're doing well and what we're not, because before we start reinventing the wheel, we should figure out where we're at.
Even if we take Grand Traverse County as the example, if that's the leading example for a plan, that's the best version we have out of the 3 right now. We take that version and decide what we want to move forward with from there. It doesn't matter what Benzie it does matter, but ultimately they're
all very similar, and they were all given to us. Here's your blueprint, you fill in the blanks. So, but like each plan does their own recycling. When you say Leelanau does 10,000 tons, if it's recycling 4, well then it's at 50%. It isn't, but you just need to know where we're at.
And I want us to, it's the only time we will be together as a committee is in this very formal, like governmental semicircle mic'd sort of format. And so, but a committee sort of, to me, means like a group of people, like you mentioned, a high school group trying to work on some kind of term paper together. That's like late nights with like Doritos and just more of a camaraderie feeling. And so like I'm trying to figure out how can we blend that so that we're all actual real humans working with each other as real humans, so that when we get into the points where like, well, I think we should do this, and Matthew's like, well, I think we should do that, then we can figure out how to navigate that balancing act that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to what you can help us bring to each other in terms of
maybe some Doritos.
I was just going to say, obviously, I need Doritos.
That was not a hint. That was just a throwback.
Yeah.
I'll just add one piece, which is I appreciate Jim's comment, and I think one of the things that somehow we need to incorporate is the data. I like data. I think it's a really valuable, that's how my brain works. And so when we're looking at what works and what doesn't work and what are strengths, like pulling those examples over time historically would be really helpful to help evaluate that what does work, what doesn't work.
When we started our company, though, I did find that not just the data was kind of restrictive, but the verbiage in the plans were also restrictive, the way that it allowed you to move and do things throughout the waste management plan. So it's not just the hard numbers, it's some of the actual writing style of it too, which has been difficult.
And I can already tell that you know way more than I do about these things, which is helpful to appreciate that some people in this table have worked for years with those plans, and some of us have like Googled them twice, and that's pretty much the
Memorize
extent.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So just like giving us some homework that might help level, bring that a little closer to at least working off the same documents.
Okay, so just to recap so far, a SWOT analysis, what's working well, what's not working well, what we're doing well, where we're missing the mark on the existing plans. And I'm not sure if that's all 3 existing plans or just the Grand Traverse County, so we should clarify.
I think all three
that.
counties need to
Yeah.
understand what is working well, where their threats are, where their opportunities are,
Yeah.
and where their weaknesses are. It as counties, but also as a collective somehow.
Yeah,
And to the extent they're very overlappy, it would be pretty efficient to do all three, it seems,
yeah,
I'm guessing.
yeah.
The only problem you have is Grand Traverse is very heavily populated, so once you move into Leelanau and Benzie County, some of the definitions within the plan will have to be a little more broad so that it's not, delve into too deeply from a waste and recycling perspective.
Nice. That point will probably come up as a weakness, right, or an opportunity as we look at these, as we're thinking about merging into one, right? What are the things that we need to think about from the three?
By definition.
We also need to be conscious that all three counties are paying an equal share. And I've already run into counties squabbling with each other over this at different areas, not this one.
Okay.
So you just want to make sure everybody is conscious that they all have the same seat at the table and that we're not overshadowing or that on badly.
The particular definition I would be talking about is in Grand Traverse County, within certain areas, you provide recycling services,
no.
and you have to as a hauler. If you provide any service for waste removal, you must also, and it doesn't have to be affordable so that somebody actually takes your offer. It just has to be offered.
City proper.
Correct, yeah, so.
So with this data, method is important to me of how we got the material.
Okay. So in terms of, I'm listening for a couple things, changes to what we do next. And I think for the next meeting, I think it would be helpful to have the conversation about like SWOT the existing plans and also have a refresh on the MMP process. I would think that we might have new questions about MMP or new that might trigger some, we should think about how this could look going forward. Those feel to me like two helpful kind of level setting opportunities for the group. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And then in terms of like agreements we need to make as a team so that we all feel productive and like we can contribute, I'm hearing that let's recognize that every county has an equal seat at the table and hold that throughout. So we are a team working together, the three of us. Data, I made a note, data rules, like as in we need data at all times, but be conscious too of making sure that we're specific about where that data came from and how it was sourced. And that we'd like to try to, connect beyond the microphones. And I know it's hard. I mean, the whole arrangement is kind of set up to sort of, you got to zip yourself up before you get in the seat and really make sure you're presenting your best self forward. And that's great, but also we're a team. And if it's Doritos, I don't even know, can we have food in here? But like, what is the way we can, continue to just gel as a team and build that trust that we might come at this issue differently, but we're definitely all here because we care and want to see success and action in this arena. So how do we, continue to work together in that way? And sometimes for some teams, it's just time, right? And more time together as the pieces begin to click, as we all begin to develop that shared understanding, we feel more confident about our role at the table and our teammates, and that happens. But I think holding that as a something you'd like to continue to build is important to call out. Reactions? Anything else?
Logistics question for staff. We're not a board, right? Like that's something different. This is normally a board room meeting, and do we have to meet at a board table, or could we meet at one of the committee rooms? Just for when you're sitting at a round table, it sort of changes the dynamic and it lets more people sit at the table, and you don't have these things, and you can be more like a committee. I don't know if it matters, but it just seems like it might change some of the formality and help us be more like a committee and less like a board.
I would welcome that if that logistically is possible.
At least in this building, there are at least several other rooms that we sometimes meet in for different things.
With proper windows, which would be
With windows.
Yeah. I mean, I think if the team welcomes that change, I think that would probably feel more comfortable both for you and for the public in attendance. And I think we'd probably move through things in a more organic way. No pun intended. or if you would much prefer to be here, we can stay here, but
I'm
it's-
just curious about how the structure of public input and all that would work, but I mean, after we could rescind back to, you know.
We do public comment. I mean, we do public comment in a tiny little conference room. We do public comment in training room. That doesn't change the opportunity for, and especially if we're not being televised, which I don't know why we need to be televised.
We just need a recording, so as long as we can get a quality recording of the meeting, then I don't have a problem with changing the location. I don't know if Chris or Maxwell want to weigh in at all on that, but.
Just from a logistics standpoint, at the next meeting will be here at the governmental center. So obviously there's other facilities. The following meeting will take place in Leelanau. So we would, depending on the wishes of the committee, we would just have to coordinate. And as Lydia pointed out, to ensure that we can also capture some sort of recording of the session as well.
Okay, so we can do some research into how that would actually work and then get back to you with it's possible, it's not possible. Okay. In terms of, and we can always come back to this kind of plan to plan, I'm calling it, but the questions about the MMP process itself, maybe it's too early to have this conversation, given that we're really going to dive into it in more detail next meeting with the 3 existing plans and also the overall materials management plan process. But are there portions of this project that you feel you need more information on or you'd like clarification on? It could be very specific, like how are we going to deal with food waste here? But it also could be broader, like if you have general questions about the MMP overall. It's an overused phrase because it's a good one. There really aren't any bad questions. And if you have a question, that means that many others, especially not around this table, also share that same question. So to help Lydia as she prepares for her presentation, are there any hot topics you want to be sure we touch on in that overview?
Collection of hazardous waste, for instance, rather than each individual county doing a bunch of little hazardous waste collections, which still might happen, but having a place where people can be pointed to take it. It's always open.
I think we have some really talented and informed staff, and so really getting their take on the SWOT as part of our homework, and then we can layer on top of that would be helpful.
So Sarna, would you like staff to take the first SWOT and bring that to the group at the next meeting? Or start from scratch and we all, identify together?
I think it would be important for the entire committee, including staff, to know the structure of the current plan. So we know what we're looking to make moving forward with amendments. But the current structure of the plan was put forth as a good document at one point.
I don't think I want staff to do a complete SWOT and then us do another. If that's the suggestion, I don't think that's, but maybe some probing questions or some, I don't know how they can help guide us with that, but if there is some initial.
I mean, it's a 162-page document, the Grand Traverse Solid Waste Plan. And so, just thinking about how to narrow the scope of where the focus really needs to be for this committee. Is it rewriting the plan? I think the staff should be involved in developing whatever the SWOT analysis that we collectively do. I'm not saying they should start it off and then we finish it. I'm not saying that necessarily, but I think that I'm just recognizing that there's wisdom and experience in that side of the table and wanting to take advantage of that.
Is the definition a rewrite of the plan?
Yeah, we're updating from solid waste management plans to material management plans with new goals. So I have a deeper knowledge of the existing plans for both Grand Traverse and Benzie. Also Leelanau, because Benzie and Leelanau are very similar, their plans. The 168-page version of the Grand Traverse County Plan is mostly obsolete. When they amended it in 2011, when they updated it rather, and then later amended it, it's a much sleeker document. So while it looks formidable in pages, if you read the first dozen pages, you'll see that a lot of it is recording the original plan that is no longer part of the current plan. The Benzie and Leelanau plans are part of kind of what happened as a cookie cutter approach in the late 90s, early 2000, that several counties around the state adopted. And so what Grand Traverse County did in 2011 is probably where a lot of our focus should go, and to also keep in mind what Corey had mentioned, the different demographics. So what might be different. There are a lot of good things we can take out of the amended Grand Traverse County plan to adopt into the new plan for all three counties. I don't know that we need to do a deep dive into the old Benzie and Leelanau County plans. That work has been done. I think that we're just going to take the 2011 amended Grand Traverse. This would be my recommendation. Review that, also review the others because of the different, populations and the density. But also remember that we're planning, this is a bigger picture of, we recognize that we're planning as a region, not that it'll be a single plan, but the end goal will all be very similar. I think if you're looking for staff to do some work, I would maybe recommend in that direction of reviewing the existing plans, not necessarily in too much depth into the existing Benzie and Leelanau, understanding that that's already been done, and got us to the most current Grand Traverse County plan. How can we take that and improve upon it? Also identify the new, the new laws. So the import-export is no longer needs to be, it doesn't exist anymore, or once this new plan comes out. So I feel like I'm a little bit too far ahead to be very good in this conversation. It just sounds like a lot of words at the moment. So it might be a good idea if we could put together a document that helped everyone get on that same page.
That's more what I'm thinking, like a little historical context to bring everybody up to the same speed where it sounds like some of us already might be, and I don't think we want to get into the weeds with you, Elise, on like all the details of what's going to go. I mean, we're going to spend a lot of time on data and what's going into the actual plan. But we know that the old plan said we should have a 50% reduction in total solid waste by 2017. And like, how close are we to that? That's an opportunity space and also a weakness space, I'm pretty certain. And then we've got all these other, like Networks Northwest commissioned a report on all 10 counties in our region, including the 3 that we're representing, that really outlines like, here's what, some recommendations on the top things to focus on, including household hazardous waste. Like, how can we provide more resources to our households to be able to get rid of that stuff in a safe and effective manner. That was one of the top 5 for Grand Traverse County, at least. I've gotten that far through that document. There's a lot of documents to read. So, anyway,
I would like to get a copy of this fabulous Grand Traverse County plan and read it.
It's available on the Recycle Smart website, or yeah.
Okay, that's a Grand Traverse County
Yeah.
site.
And I'm
We
sure
know
we
if
could
it's-
send some links out. I'm sorry. I'm sure we could send some links out after the meeting too, right? So it's easy for folks to grab. Who did I interrupt?
So has the state put out an official, this is what the plan needs to look like document yet, or are they still kind of?
There's a plan format available on Eagle's website if you just look up materials management planning.
And it's actually a editable.
Yeah.
Well, I originally heard it wasn't, but is it kind of in the format of our old one or totally different?
It's very similar to,
So it's kind of readable when you go through both of
it's
them?
yeah.
All right.
Which plan? You have Leelanau, Benzie, Grand Traverse?
Well,
You know,
I'm gonna tell you right now, Benzie and Leelanau are probably pretty cookie cutter. I mean,
That's one of my big concerns. We want to do a great big analysis. David knows the plan, I know the plan, Lydia knows the plan, Gail knows the plan, Jen knows the plan, and from my perspective, every one of those plans are different. And to really get into the weeds, we're gonna be here all year.
Yep.
we got three.
we are going to be here all year.
No, I mean, just to say, okay, this is what's Leelanau, this is what Benzie, this is what Grand Traverse, you know, so.
So
It's a
Leelanau
tough-
and Benzie are much similar in that they're the product of that late 90s.
But the perspective from so I'm sitting on a Leelanau board, and I know that, you know, Bill's here also, that, you know, Leelanau County might have some different thoughts or opinions or what they would like to do in the future that's not done, potentially that Benzie or Grand Traverse, so it's gonna be an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
So, you know, for you to read, in those individual plans, they're gonna be tough.
That's why I think that maybe the focus should be on the work that was done in 2011 that you guys were a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I was part of the 2011, 2012 plan,
Yeah,
but we even struggled on that because we had so much minutia behind it.
right. But that was a lot of work that I don't know that we need
Right.
to do again, I think is what you may be
Yeah.
saying. And I feel like we're closer than ever, the three counties, not only closer than ever in the end, you know, where we want this region to look like, but also we have the guide rails from the state.
Okay.
So they're saying, these are the goals, tell us how you're gonna get here. And we're recognizing as a region that there aren't boundaries to get to these goals, so I think our plans are gonna look very similar. And they actually have a format, so if you go on to the Eagle website, it's almost like this plan is gonna be, you know, they ask the question and you type in the paragraph. And so that's all available that you can see now. So we have guide rails. This group, what we have to discover together is how to answer the questions that the state is asking in their plan format. There's the very, not simple things, but we have to identify all the processors in the area, you know, for organics, landfills, those common. But then we need to explain how we're going to reach the goals that are set out by law in each plan. And I suspect because, you know, all the same haulers service the same areas, generally speaking, I believe we all share the same goals. There is a goal we have to meet. I suspect our paths toward the, you know, the goals set forth in law are going to be very similar.
So, David, are you saying that we should work from backwards? Because you're saying we have guide rails and the state has a format. I'm just throwing that out.
I think it would be a good idea for the members of this committee to be familiar with what the state is looking for as a acceptable plan, and then, you know, also gauge the pulse of the region on how we reach those goals.
Can we
I just wanted to clarify, that plan format's been removed from the Eagle webpage.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
Oh,
well, I mean, I'm looking at a format for preparing materials management plan. It's a Word document from the Eagle website. And it's got like section 1, planning area profile, section 2, material management goals, and it looks like you
Yeah, I was like, I swear, I just saw it the other day.
plug stuff
Can we
in.
mock work it backwards and then take what we have from the 2011 plan and see what's missing or what
what
needs
I'm
to be input and how it needs to be?
Yeah,
That's not a
I've
bad
seen
No,
idea.
I just,
sure you've seen- yeah,
we're,
I know
it's,
you know.
we're gonna be in the weeds for
That's what we
hours,
Yeah.
days,
We
weeks.
got lots of time. We got nothing.
I have it downloaded as well, so like I have the format, but
I
if you go.
saw it,
No, I
this
just,
one I'm looking at materials management plan.
So,
very-
but back to Elise, and well, like, this is, now we're starting to get into the weeds here a little bit, which is not really what Placecraft is here to
Not at the
help
same
us
place
do.
as
We're,
you.
you're setting us up to
You're at
plan to
plans and
plan.
I'm at planning.
Yeah, except what was helpful about that conversation,
That's what I was looking at.
I was sourcing more questions, I think, Lydia, for our presentation to focus on. So the questions I heard were, what is the scope? Like, is this an update or rewrite? What is the state requiring? What is the
Okay.
format? What are the current plans like? How are they
That's what I-
similar?
that's
How
what I
are they
just- what
different?
you're looking at now is-
I think that is helpful background info to kind of guide our what I'm calling like level setting, where we all walk away from the next meeting feeling like, you know, if I asked you right now, like on a scale of 1 to 5, what's your confidence level about understanding the current plans? I feel like we'd get a really different answer, right? Which mine would be 0. So what I would love after the next meeting is to walk away with like, we're all closer to like the 3 range would be ideal, right? Or we don't have to have them memorized, but we have some sense of this is what the state's requiring, this is what we have now.
It is, but
And that helps us answer the question, do we back it in or do we start from scratch, right? Like, I
I think
that
the one
would
thing to
help.
remember too is we're all here representing something. So I'm representing
I was one more.
Holler or whatever, they're representing something, and then we have our municipal,
Totally.
they're going to want to see different things than maybe we have projected to see as a private entity. So it's going to be diverse opinion broadly across the whole thing.
And that's what I'm interested in teasing out a little bit better, so that we can see, okay, where are our shared values? Like that all of us at the table, this stuff is no brainer, we're all motivated by the same things, and where are the spaces where the motivations are clearly different, and they're, you know, that might emerge as conflict later, or as the need to do a balancing act, and trying to set ourselves up for success in that way.
So just at risk of demonstrating how little I know about this, especially compared to others at this table, I don't know what our goals used to be for recycling organic hazardous in Grand Traverse, Leelanau, and Benzie, and I don't know what the state tells us our new goals are going to be, and I don't know what the gaps between those are. and
Or where
how
we're
hard
at
it's-
today with what we're actually collecting.
And how hard it's going to be to shrink those. That just feels like pretty fundamental to what we're trying to do, and I don't even know, you know, how hard it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, are we just talking about, well, we just got to shave a little bit here, but we're really going to have to, you know what I mean? Like, that would just be, but I'm also coming at it not as somebody who is immersed in like the logistics and practicalities of getting this waste to this place. So it is going to be but to me, just sort of knowing ultimately, in a year, we must have a plan that shows how we're going to get an additional 40% off organic waste in these areas and whatever the numbers are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. We have folks who are really informed, really well-versed, and then some of us are approaching this without as much background, and that's not going to be helpful to each other, right? We'll be making wild suggestions because we're not rooted into the plan, or we won't be making any suggestions because it's all so, you know, kind of wah-wah wee-woo, and we don't really know what we're going after and what the state requires. So I do think, and I'm looking for buy-in from the group, it does feel to me like our next meeting should really be that informational discussion about what exists and what we need, where there's gaps, where we think we're really strong, et cetera. I think we're asking those questions in different ways, but I think we need to have kind of materials management in Grand Traverse, Leelanau, and Benzie 101. Like what do we have, what do we need, and what's the gap to get there, so that we can then all identify, oh, this is going to be really difficult, or this is going to be really easy, or we're going to have this information or these audiences to help us do this. I think that's kind of the baseline knowledge we all need as a group, it sounds like.
And it sounds like some of us are going to be listening and some of you are going to be educating because you already have that knowledge, right? You already can tell us why it's so hard to shrink those numbers or whatever.
Yeah, I'm envisioning kind of a conversation where we're all kind of some are offering information, and this, in my experience, or when we were at this table in 2011, this was the issue, and some are asking questions like, well, what do you mean specifically, and what is this, and what does the state mean when it says this? I think I'm hoping a lot of conversation as we're looking at these more specific guidelines. How does that feel to the team and to staff? Are we getting closer? Yeah.
What's the goal? Is 40% by when again? For the recycling?
Yeah,
By
I
which
think
year?
2030.
2030, and then collectively between the 3 counties, you're already halfway there, correct? Or we
Yeah.
never looked at that.
So it's a state goal, and I have looked at that. It's been a little while. There's some new elements that the state is allowing us to measure that would increase our percentage that honestly put us fairly close.
I could figure it all out, but not collectively, but it'd be interesting. We know the goal is 40. We know that Leelanau is X. We know what Benzie's X, what Grand Traverse is X, and it'd be interesting how big a gap that we have in between there. Just from knowledge perspective, some counties are starting from scratch, which is a benefit between these 3 counties. You've already have implemented, successful recycle programs for the last 20 years. So it'd be interesting to say, we're at the 29, 30%. So what do we have to do to get to the additional 10%?
And also, the state has a 50% reduction of food waste goal that doesn't really line with their 45% of all solid waste reduction, too.
In addition to that?
I don't really understand how it fits together, because we've looked at it and we're like, well,
I
how?
would assume that food right now is currently defined as solid waste.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure, but
so
they're saying 50% reduction of food waste, but they also have this goal of 45% reduction of all waste. And they seem to be just
Yeah,
2 separate goals that aren't,
Is it 2 goals or 1?
you asked Eagle, like,
I always look at it as a goal, as a thing to strive for. Doesn't mean you're gonna hit it, but
well,
there's a lot of
and to that
low-hanging fruit
point,
out there.
there are a lot of low-hanging food. But to that point, maybe our goals are higher than what the state's target is too. Like, it could go in the opposite direction as well, not just like a, we might not see the state's goal as what's the word I'm trying to think of? It starts with an A. I can't think of the word. Aspirational. Thank you, whoever whispered that over there. We might see that as our baseline, and we're going for platinum.
Is there a way to bring all those new metrics and old metrics to this committee? And then is it better to red pen the existing Grand Traverse, or is it better to pull out a very high level of it and red pen it as a group?
So the Benzie and Leelanau County programs are currently residential only, so that information is pretty easily available. Getting the commercial information, I presumed that that type of work and getting into these details would be part of what a consultant group would do with gap analysis. I think that a lot of what we're talking about is also work that I anticipated they would do some of that work has been done. It would be, I could pretty quickly, I think, each county could pretty quickly get us the information we do have,
Yeah,
but it's not all of it.
but yeah,
because-
it's not the deep dive yet.
Yeah,
Are we wasting our time doing that stuff then
I feel
if the
like-
consultant's going to?
I feel
I mean,
like.
we need to familiarize ourselves with it and how we're going to change it, but as far as all the
That's what
gathering of
I'm
the data.
Trying to work through is like, is that stuff important to the committee right now? I'm not quite sure. I think part of the intent of this meeting was, this facilitated meeting, was again, the idea, of talking through, getting to know each other, more of cohesiveness, be sharing ideas of why are you here, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if we're kind of steering in a direction that we're going to be doing all over again with a hired entity in a couple months from now.
Great point.
I feel like we've spent a lot of months talking about administrative things, and I still feel like we don't know what the goals are and where we're at. Like, to me, I agree, we don't need to deep dive into it, but we need to know. I've just spent 5 minutes looking through Eagle's website, and they don't say, here are the state's goals. You know what, they just don't tell, they've got 17 templates for how to fill out a grant application, but they don't just tell you, you need to get to X by, you know what I mean? So I feel like that's I feel like the conversation about who we are and what we bring to the table and how we're gonna get there will be more productive when we've just figured out some of the concept of what we're trying to achieve here.
But just that high level
High level,
concept, like,
high level.
Yeah.
the state's goal is 45% reduction of all waste. We're at
Grand Traverse County set
30%.
whatever, and we have achieved this by this date, and Benzie set this goal, and they have only gotten this far, whatever, right? Like
Their slideshow really bullet points.
I would say our area has the infrastructure to do a lot of stuff. You can recycle, you can do hazardous waste collection, all that. But people need to be convinced to do it. There's got to be education. So when I go around and talk about this MPP, what do we need? And I think they're going to say, oh, we need leaf recycling or something. Every person has said, I need to know what I can recycle, where I can recycle it. And we get, in Leelanau County, telephone calls. As archaic as that. What can how do I recycle this? So these websites and stuff are cool, but a lot of people are calling up our planning department and saying, how do I do this? So education is going to have to be huge in this thing to get our rates to a higher point.
To me, that is like, we've got the programs and the facilities, and if that's the conclusion, like in order to get to 45%, we don't need to build new landfills and come up with, I'm sure there's some of that, right? But we need to get more people participating in the things we
Exactly.
have. That's helpful, because then we can actually have a conversation about focusing on education and reaching the townships and the alternate, you know what I mean? But at this point, we don't even know that, or as you know that, but, as a team, we don't know that.
I do think, oh, I'm sorry, TJ.
Go ahead. No.
I do think, you are right to point out that elements of the conversation we have at this meeting, at our next meeting, at our June meeting, you will repeat some of those conversations when you are actually in the MMP planning process. But I think that's part of the point. We're planning to plan, meaning we're getting you set up as a team to do this well. And I think the first step of that is having a shared understanding of what it is you're being asked to do, so that when the consultant comes in who can do these more detailed analysis for you, when they come in to meet with you and get started, you're not starting from this place of kind of not having a shared understanding of what it is we're asked for, but we're starting from a more informed, we're ready to go. We identified that we really want to understand this. We know that's part of your scope, not Placecraft's scope, and we really think that's important data for us. I think we can do both. I think we can have a level-setting informational conversation and also, hold that parking lot of the next consultant is going to provide this detail for us, but let's make sure we're clear on what we want so that that consultant knows what's expected of them. That also could be helpful information for you as you are interviewing prospective teams, to know what you really want to look for. If we've identified some existing, or some kind of starter, high level, greens and reds, that might be helpful context for you then to say that firm is really good at this, and we know that's going to be, or we think that's going to be an issue or opportunity for us. Does that make sense? Yes.
So you're saying we need to develop the roadmap for the consultant?
I think that's part of it, but I think first, what I'm hearing is develop the roadmap for us.
Right.
Right,
I mean, your
yeah.
role is to develop the roadmap, and, you know, you're here April, May, and June. Come July when the consultants say, okay, we as a group, this is what we think we should be doing or not doing.
Yeah, I think so, and just coming from a more informed place, and you'll be aligned as a team around what you're asked to do, what perspectives you're each bringing to the table. I think a lot of that will be easier. I think, TJ, you mentioned this. Some of that will come up easier as we're looking at more concrete, specific, like framing of the project. And I think that is this conversation about what exists, what we need, and what I'm hearing is keep it at a high level. Let's not expect that we all read every page of the plan, but let's definitely expect that we all have an understanding of what exists and what's being asked of us, where those things dovetail really nicely and where they don't, and we're going to have some work to do to catch up to the state's expectations or exceed them. But this is coming from the person who doesn't know what biochar is, so I want to be sure that you like that idea and that we're all, we're on the right page. And I don't want to be so duplicative that you have the same conversation with a consultant in 3 months.
I think our conversation with the consultant will be more efficient if we've already had what it sounds like we're envisioning for the next 2 months.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for,
Okay.
is to be able to be clear and directive to our consultant rather than let the consultant direct us towards some boilerplate, fill in the blanks document.
And you have to have a knowledge base of what is existing and where you want to move forward.
Yeah, and how important is education over more hazardous waste drop-off options, or, et cetera, et cetera.
And not just what data, but like Bill said, the method in which it's retrieved.
Quality of the information.
The quality of the information.
I think everyone would agree that we've all worked together. It's all about education. I mean,
And that's what we should get from Michigan State. Where it's working really well, and how do they do it? How are they educating? If they have a really high rate of recycling or a really high rate of hazardous waste collection or something.
Or statistically, how do you get people to participate in anything, let alone just recycling? What's the best psychological
Gotta make
warfare
it
to use?
easier than the alternative, which is going to be tough in this scenario, because the alternative is throwing stuff in the least expensive landfill in the United States, is right here in Michigan, right? That's why we import garbage from other countries, or at least we have been. So the alternative is so easy that to get people to do something other than that is going to be very difficult. Because the best way to get somebody to do something is to make it easier than the alternative.
Or cheaper.
Well, that's part of the ease, right? Dollars is friction.
But all of the
Time is friction.
all of the private company guys up here can tell you that both recycling and garbage will have to remain expensive until they stop placing as much garbage and are recycling more, and then you can switch the other direction. You can throw less away and recycle more, but in the meantime, to get people to recycle, they're going to have to buy in. They're going to have to buy in to their own future, if you will, to pay for garbage and recycle while we figure out how much less garbage we have and how much less we have to charge for that when the recycle goes up.
And that is one of Eagle's goals too, is to improve the quality of recycled materials and those streams. So that comes back to education. And then also in that email I sent out earlier this week, just educational opportunities for this committee. The Michigan Recycling Coalition Conference, that's always really informative. That's in May. And then there is a webinar series, 5-part webinar series about how where we're at with recycling in the United States, what are some of the gaps, and maybe what the future looks like. So those are some opportunities if there are people on this committee that need more education for themselves, that there are free opportunities out there. The webinar is completely free.
The higher quality recycled materials is these guys' job. They collect it, they gotta sort it more finely and everything.
Well,
But residents
best way to
need
sort is
to know.
the production part, though, because the minute I throw my coffee grounds on my cardboard, the cardboard has less value no matter who collects it. So, I mean, really, the best, yeah. The-
somebody
Everyone has a
else's coffee
responsibility for
grounds on your
sorting.
cardboard.
Yeah, somebody
That's
else
the
throws
problem,
coffee, yeah. Contamination is a huge issue for recyclers, I know that. And food waste is one of the biggest contaminants of otherwise high-value recyclables. So dealing with the organic stream makes a ton of sense for a ton of reasons.
So in terms of next steps, I think that if we work from the April, May, June outline we've put together, I think let's focus on getting grounded in what we have and where we need to go. That could include a high-level review from staff of what exists, the existing plans. That could include a strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats of those plans. Did we push that away, or are we still thinking of doing the SWOT analysis in this early stage, or are we going to wait to do that?
I think a high-level SWOT of what is working and
Yeah.
not working, not necessarily about the 3 individual plans per
Yeah.
se, but like we're not hitting our existing targets and the new targets are going to be even higher, and how big is that gap? And is it true for all streams or just
Okay.
organic streams, you know?
I like that too, because as a planner, and all of you know this, the plan doesn't always match reality, right? So we can get familiar with the plan. That's, what exists, what we're working within. Get familiar with what the state's expecting and requiring of us, and then also do that SWOT, or call it what's working, what's not working. Get familiar with what the actual landscape of material management in Northern Michigan in these 3 counties today, right? Like, where are we excellent and where are we not excellent, and everything in between. I think that could be the focus for our next conversation around a smaller table with public at the table. And then I would look to kind of hold on to some of the things we've outlined for May and June and see at the next meeting which of those are most helpful to us to talk about in June. And maybe there's something else that comes up too. But that could include best practices, potential trade-offs, like where do we see there might be priorities that don't align, and how do we balance that, target goals and community engagement, which I definitely want to hit on before you then work with a consultant to do that. But I think at this point, let's not make a plan that's too firm for June, because we have yet to do May. Does that make sense to the group? So in May, we would do a high-level presentation of the existing plans, what the state is requiring and expecting of you, and then an analysis together of what's working and what's not working in the existing materials management landscape, so that we walk away with a shared kind of level setting around the topic we're proposing to work within. Sound like a plan to plan to plan? Okay. I mean, I have what I need to kind of send Lydia. I have a lot of questions that I can share with you that came up about the process. And then what's the process for sharing info back to the group? Like, can we send back our kind of next steps and make sure that we got it right from you? Or what's the process there in terms of communication?
Emails.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to just send to the group sort of what I just said, but in writing, and make sure that I got everything you're hoping for.
So
Yeah.
my personal suggestion, since our emails are quite full, is the chair and vice chair and maybe the committee that did the bidding might be sort of a working committee that can make sure that you're moving in the right direction. I don't know if they're up for that, but I mean, I think for all of us it seems like it might be a little redundant, but maybe get the brains of the group doing that for us.
Or would that particular set of goals for next meeting go through staff?
Yeah.
And that's
And
fine
then
too.
Lydia, maybe
If
an
you're- if
update,
you're-
or it's like a short
Maybe
update?
it goes through staff, and if you want to copy or not copy, but I agree that I don't think the whole committee needs to be micromanaging.
There's a level of pertinence that you provide information when it's necessary.
We've
versus
been
what's
working as a team with chair and vice chair and staff. Should we stay in that kind of group behind the scenes, and then we'll talk with you at our next meeting?
Yeah, I think that's more realistic.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Looking
didn't-
forward to it.
You didn't draw anything on your board?
You're right.
Just write dysfunctional.
Yeah, you're right. Maxwell even offered me markers, and I totally forgot.
I also have a hard time focusing.
Well, shoot. Should we draw something before we, no, I think we're all set.
Big smiley face. There you go. Have a great weekend. The sun is gonna shine.
That's a true facilitator. Anything else for me?
Okay. Well, thank you. That was a nice palate cleansing opener, like open conversation for the group. So that's great. Good energy. Second public comment. Dr. Bob.
I'd have a look at it, certainly.
Get a second look when I look it up online and print it.
Okay.
Like that back. I do have, so if anybody has one particular topic, feel free. So, again, my name is Dr. Bob Laporte, and I'm a retired radiation oncologist from Cowell Family Cancer Center. And I've been a volunteer for, since like 21, so I guess that's 4 years of volunteering for nonprofits, especially Seeds. They've sent me some jobs every week or two, and then more. And no, but seriously, this is what, community does. And I have to read correctly. Elise, you wanted to hear about biochar? I don't mean to try and look cool, I just forgot my readers. So, I'd like to ask is this like Robert's Rules of Orders that public comment can only be a 3-minute talk?
It's in the, I'm just noticing that we now have a policy on this that was linked in the board pack. So, you state your name, township or districts, relevant and germane to this committee. No, may not speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time to answer questions by the committee members. Not to exceed 3 minutes. It says the chairperson shall control the amount of time. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but, so yes, 3 minutes.
So that's,
I'm not sure what time this time started either, so.
oh, I'm probably all over time. Can we,
2:27.
Okay, we'll give you 3, there we go,
All right, so-
2:27.
I'm here to talk about a project that I've been working with the Horticulture Experiment Center Station. And so I've been learning a lot about biochar. Biochar industry seeks capital to build plants. Right now, it also looks for markets for the product. This is not anything familiar for our agricultural producers, our growers and farmers. This is difficult because many people do not understand the value of biochar yet. Biochar has been used since 300 BC, and then back through the 15th century and pretty much 18th century, all the way back, biochar was actually being used. And mostly on to reduce the smell of human excrement. But it turns out it's also incredible partner with something like compost, we're finding out now. And it's really going to be a valuable soil amendment, but there's about 40 other things that charcoal can also filter, including there's some of the things that biochar can fix. I'm going to make this real quick. Treat drought conditions by holding water in soils, fertilizer shortages by holding nutrients in the soil. Biochar can take care of dead soil by improving conditions for beneficial soil microbes. Smelly manure and compost by supporting good microbes. Balancing the carbon to nitrogen ratio, retaining nutrients. Polluted soil by immobilizing heavy metals and other contaminants. Flooding by improving rainwater infiltration. There's also a fellow in, I think, Cedar with a business called Inhabitac, Nathan, if anybody knows him. Flooding by improving rainwater infiltration. Eutrophication by absorbing nitrogen in water bodies. Drinking water by filtering out contaminants. Building material impacts when used as a substitute for resource-intensive components of asphalt, concrete, and other building materials. Human health and well-being when used as an ingredient in health and beauty products and for management of human sanitation. Animal health when used as an animal feed supplement and for manure management and sanitation. Forest fires by converting excess fuel loads to water holding. My recommendation and dream would be to start selling and actually producing biochar so that people get to find out what it's all about. And these constant case studies can be made monthly to show what this stuff is doing. So thank you very much for considering biochar now and forever, probably. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And I think that brings us to meeting adjournment. Do we need a motion for adjournment? Or do we just get to, I forget every time. Do we need a motion to adjourn? Or we just get to do it? Is there any board comments? Then at 2:30, we will adjourn this MMPC meeting.